I didn't plan to crash her car, I swear. But the truth is, I wasn't really planning anything anymore. The breakup with Lila had gutted me. One minute I was dreaming about engagement rings and where we'd raise our kids. Next I was standing on the curb, watching her throw a suitcase of my clothes onto the wet pavement while her new spiritual partner waited in his hybrid. 2 days later, I took her mom's Lexus for a joyride. Not out of revenge, at least that's what I told myself. She'd asked me to return a damn casserole dish. I saw the keys on the counter and told myself, 5 minutes. Just clear your head. The next thing I knew, there was shattered glass, the airbag choking me with powder, and a cherry blossom tree bent sideways, like I'd personally insulted it. The damage? Catastrophic. The car? Toast. The humiliation? Absolute. Lila's mom, June, stared at me across the insurance office table like she was calculating the exact price of my soul. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just sipped her iced coffee and said calmly, "You'll work it off." I blinked. I, I can get a job. I'll pay you back. She tilted her head. You went to massage therapy school, didn't you? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I ended up massaging the tension out of my ex-girlfriend's mother every Tuesday and Thursday while trying not to fall apart. If there's a hell specifically for people who screw up everything they touch, I'd reserve a VIP suite. June's living room didn't help. It smelled like eucalyptus and ambition, polished floors, neatly stacked travel books, a Buddha statue with a post-it note that said, "Breathe." That first massage session, I stood awkwardly near the table, clutching a bottle of grapeseed oil like it was a peace offering. "Do you remember the proper draping protocol?" she asked, already slipping off her cardigan. "Yeah, I'm licensed, not a criminal," I muttered. She shot me a wry smile. "That's still up for debate." June wasn't like Lila. She didn't mask discomfort with performative positivity or passive-aggressive Pinterest quotes. She was sharp, observant, the kind of woman who probably diagnosed people 5 minutes into meeting them. When I touched her back that first time, my hands trembled. She was tense. Years of raising a daughter solo while running her wellness studio had carved those knots into her spine. I tried to keep it professional, but something in the silence between us unnerved me. She didn't make small talk. She breathed, deeply, purposefully. "You're good," she said finally, as I adjusted the pressure around her shoulder blade. "I practiced on Lila," I admitted, instantly regretting it. Her breath hitched, just slightly. She always hated that. Said it made her feel too seen. That word stuck with me, seen. It was the one thing I used to crave in our relationship. Lila liked curated connections, photo-ready affection, filtered conversations. But real vulnerability? Number that scared her. I used to think I was too much for her, too intense. Maybe I still was. By the third week, something shifted. June started opening up, not in obvious ways, but in scattered puzzle pieces. A comment here, a sigh there. "She's always been like that," she said one afternoon as I worked on her hands. "Lila, everything has to sparkle, even grief." I didn't know how to respond, so I just kneaded the tension from her palm until it softened like warm clay. "I think she was scared of how much you cared," June said quietly. "You overwhelmed her." That stung, not because it wasn't true, but because hearing it from her mother somehow made it real. "I wasn't trying to suffocate her," I said, more defensively than I meant to. "She knows, but knowing and feeling are two different animals." The emotional landscape between us was growing thick, like a fog that lingered long after the rain. I started to notice little things. June always made sure there was herbal tea ready when I arrived. She played the same playlist every time, soft piano and indie ballads. One day I walked in and she'd even left a wrapped granola bar on the table. It should have felt maternal. It didn't. Then came the night everything unraveled. Lila texted me. "Layla, hey, weird question. Are you still going to Mom's?" My fingers hovered over the screen. I hadn't heard from her since the breakup. A brutal, no-contact kind of silence. Me. "Yeah, why?" Lila. "Just don't get too comfortable. She does this." Me. "What?" No reply. That night in June's, I couldn't focus. My hands stumbled over the usual muscle groups. I flinched when she sighed. I couldn't stop thinking about Lila's text. She does this. I finally asked, did Lila ever mention you doing something like this before? June turned her head slightly. Like what? Hiring, exes, let them into your space. She laughed, not a warm laugh. Something brittle. Is that what you think this is? A project? A therapy experiment? I don't know what this is, I said honestly. She sat up on the table, hair slightly tousled, and looked at me in a way that stripped the walls I'd rebuilt. She needed you to be perfect, June said. You were her clean white canvas. But real love, it gets messy. She didn't want a mess. I did. That word hung there. Love, like a dare. It happened 2 days later. We didn't kiss. That would have been too cliche, too forgivable. No, June invited me to dinner. Just a thank you meal, she said. She wore this emerald blouse open at the neck and served grilled salmon and some wine she'd picked up from Sonoma last spring. We sat too close. We talked too long, somewhere between just one more glass and her hand brushing mine as she laughed. I forgot I was supposed to be paying her back. We didn't sleep together, but the line between us blurred so hard it bled. The next morning I found an envelope taped to my windshield. No name, no signature. Just one word in Lila's handwriting. Wow. I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hand, June's scent still faint on my clothes. It was confirmation. She'd seen us, or guessed, or simply knew what always happens when two broken people lean too hard on each other. I tried calling her. She didn't answer. I texted 3 times, no reply. The betrayal didn't taste like infidelity. It tasted like confusion, like I'd become the very chaos I used to try to protect Lila from. Days passed. June didn't bring it up, not directly, but during our next session, her energy was different. She was softer, sadder, as if she knew whatever this was temporary. I never meant to pull you in, she said as I rolled up the mat afterward. Too late, I said, voice hoarse. She touched my arm and I flinched. Not because it hurt, but because I wanted it too much. She's not mad you crashed the car, she whispered. She's mad I didn't protect you from us. That hit me harder than any breakup ever had, because she was right. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I was mid-laundry, trying to ignore the ghost of June's touch on my skin, but something told me to pick up, some gut instinct, or guilt maybe. Hello? Hi, is this Jonah? A man's voice, steady, curious. Yeah, who's this? This is Eric. I'm Lila's stepdad. My breath caught. Lila doesn't have a stepdad. There was a pause, a long one, the kind that forces you to sit down. She didn't tell you, huh? What are you talking about? I've been married to June for almost 2 years. We were separated, took some space, but we're trying again. I didn't speak, couldn't. I felt like my brain had just blue screen. June didn't mention me? He asked, and there was no malice in his tone, just tired, confused, hurt. No, I said. No, she didn't. I figured you'd want to know before things get messier. I ended the call and sat still for 5 minutes, just absorbing, letting everything rearrange itself into a shape I didn't recognize. That night I drove to June's without texting. I parked outside her house and stared at the light in her kitchen window. June opened the door wearing a robe and a soft, practiced smile that no longer meant anything. Eric called me, I said. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't act surprised. She just nodded once and stepped aside, letting me in without a word. You're married. We're not living together. It's complicated. No, I said, my voice rising. It's dishonest. She closed the door. Slowly. I didn't lie. You didn't lie. June folded her arms and leaned against the counter. What do you want me to say, Jonah? That I manipulated you? That I used your guilt to fill the silence Eric left behind? I flinched. If that's the truth, then yeah. She looked tired, older than I'd ever seen her. I wasn't looking for this, for you, but it happened, And for a minute, it felt like maybe the universe was giving me a strange second chance. With your daughter's ex? I snapped. You think that's redemption? No, she said. I think it's grief. That stopped me cold. I didn't just lose Eric when he walked out, she said. I lost the version of myself I built around other people's expectations. I spent decades being someone's wife, someone's mom, someone's guru. Then you walked in, broken and messy, and I thought, finally someone who's not pretending. I shook my head, heart pounding. So what am I? A mirror. You were a moment, she whispered, and I needed one. I walked out. No dramatic slam of the door. No shouting match. Just silence. And a dull throb in my chest that felt like something old was finally dying. I drove to the river, the one Lila and I used to walk along in spring, throwing stones and making promises we were too young to understand. I sat on the hood of my car and watched the water until the sun started bleeding into the trees. Then I did the only thing left. I texted Lila. Me. She didn't tell me about Eric. This time she replied, Lila. I figured. She never does. Me. Why didn't you? Lila, because I wanted you to find out for yourself. There was something brutally honest in that. Almost kind. Lila. She has a pattern. She builds people into crutches, then blames them for making her limp. I stared at the screen. Me. Is that what I was to you? Her reply came instantly. Lila. No, you were the person I wished I could be. I didn't cry, but something inside me cracked, and the air felt a little easier to breathe. The next morning, I texted June, me. I won't be coming anymore, but thank you for everything, even the painful parts. She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. Instead, I booked a session at a local rehab clinic, the kind that offered trauma massage for recovering patients. I walked in, handed them my resume, and said, I'm looking for something real. And this time, I meant it. I didn't touch June's number again. I deleted it, not in anger, in necessity. But cutting ties with someone who's left fingerprints on your soul isn't as simple as deleting a contact. She haunted me, in flashes, in muscle memory. The way her fingers used to press into my shoulder blades, grounding me. The scent of her jasmine oil, her laughter, low and broken, like someone who knew life would never stop talking, but chose to laugh anyway. I stopped driving by her street. I stopped checking Lila's socials. And eventually I stopped waiting for either of them to reach out. The clinic was quiet. No fancy spa music, no false peace, just the dull hum of fluorescence and the occasional cough from the hallway. Most of my clients were trauma patients, veterans, accident survivors, abuse victims. They didn't want comfort. They wanted release. They didn't need candles and waterfalls. They needed someone to meet them at the cliff edge of their pain and not flinch. I became that person. And somewhere in the pain of others, I found silence in myself. But healing isn't linear. One Thursday afternoon, just as I finished a session with a client who'd survived a car wreck similar to mine, I stepped into the hallway and froze. Lila was there, standing at the front desk, hair shorter, shoulders square, dressed in gray slacks and a white blouse, holding a clipboard like she belonged. She turned, met my eyes, didn't smile. Neither did I. You're working here, I asked later after the shock settled. We were sitting outside on the bench behind the building. The air was heavy with the coming rain. She nodded. Social work intern, trauma integration program. I'm shadowing the caseworkers. You knew I worked here? No, she said, frowning. I swear I didn't. We both laughed. A quiet, strange laugh. The kind that comes from two people standing at the edge of an old battlefield, unsure whether to rebuild or walk away. I thought you blocked me, I said. I did, for a while, but I unblocked you about a month ago. I just didn't say anything. Why? Because I didn't know what version of you I'd get. I looked at my hands. And now? She shrugged. You look steadier. That hit harder than it should have. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other in passing. Polite nods, half smiles, no history spoken, No wounds reopened. But one Friday, the storm finally came. We were in the supply room. Both of us reached for the same box of gloves. Our hands touched. Reflexive tension. I should have told you about Eric, she said softly. I met her eyes. I should have told you about June. You didn't know. I should have known something was off. She was too curated. Lila swallowed. She's always been that way, building stories around herself to feel whole. You ever ask why? She lost her mom young. Then her first husband drank himself into a grave. Eric was supposed to be her anchor. But anchors rust. There was silence. Then I said, I miss who we were. She blinked. That version doesn't exist anymore. I know. Doesn't mean I don't grieve for it. Lila crossed her arms, leaning back against the cabinet. So what do we do with all that grief? I didn't answer. Not then, because I didn't know yet. The breakthrough came with a client named Marcus. He was ex-military, late 30s, shrapnel scars down his spine, and survivor's guilt stitched into every word he spoke. Tough guy, real alpha. Until I touched the wrong muscle and he started crying. I stopped immediately, gave him space. He said, why does healing hurt more than the pain ever did? And I said, without thinking, because healing means admitting it happened. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the river again, the same one Lila and I used to haunt. I stood there, wind in my coat, staring at the water. And for the first time since the accident, I forgave myself. For not seeing June for who she was. For not noticing how much Lila was slipping before the end. For trying to fill my emptiness with borrowed warmth. I whispered, I'm sorry. To the night, to Lila, to my former self, to the man I could have been if I'd only paid attention sooner. The next day, I found Lila sitting in the staff lounge, staring at a brochure about grief counseling. Do you want to talk? I asked. She looked up. I don't know. We don't have to talk about us. She tilted her head. Then what? About how you've been, what you've learned, who you are now. She stared at me, not with nostalgia, not with longing, with curiosity. You want to know me without the frame of our past? I nodded. If you'll let me. So we did. We talked about work, about her practicum, about how her new cat keeps peeing in her shoes, about the time a client tried to convince her he was Elvis reincarnated. Light stuff, but real. She told me, you always wanted to fix me, even when I didn't ask you to. And I said, I know. I'm learning not to do that anymore. She smiled, soft, sad, forgiving. 2 weeks later, we went for coffee after work. Nothing dramatic, no grand confessions, just two people reconnecting, not as lovers, but as something else, something better. We didn't talk about June, not at first, but eventually it came up. Do you hate her? She asked. No, I said, but I don't want to be someone she needs. Lila stirred her cup. She texted me last week. Oh? She said she's moving with Eric. They're giving it another shot. I felt nothing, no anger, no sting, just relief. I hope she finds peace, I said. She won't, Lila murmured, not until she stops using people as bandages. The real climax wasn't a single scene. It wasn't a fight or kiss or breakdown. It was a series of choices, tiny, daily, unglamorous choices to be better, to stay honest, to speak plainly, to allow space for silence. Lila and I didn't get back together, but we rebuilt something. Respect, friendship, mutual understanding. And one rainy evening, as we closed the clinic and locked up together, she turned to me and said, You're not who I thought you'd become. I raised an eyebrow. Disappointed? She shook her head. Proud. And that meant more than any apology ever could. The months that followed unfolded quietly, without fireworks or fanfare. No grand declarations, just the steady, patient work of rebuilding from the wreckage. Not of a car this time, but of trust, of identity, of hope. Lila and I weren't the people we had been before. The accident, June, the betrayal, it all reshaped us like sculptors shaping clay. Sometimes harshly, sometimes with grace. What surprised me most wasn't how much pain I still carried, but how much I was finally able to hold it without breaking. I learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending the past didn't hurt. Forgiveness was a gift I gave myself, an unshackling from the heavy chains of resentment and regret. That night, after the car crash, when I thought everything was over, it was really just the beginning to see myself clearly, beyond the labels of victim or fool, beginning to understand that healing is messy and uneven and deeply personal. I discovered that some wounds never fully disappear. They fade into scars, reminders of what we survived and who we are because of it. And sometimes those scars become the source of unexpected strength. Lila and I remained cautious friends, bound by a past neither of us could fully erase but also unwilling to be prisoners of it. We worked side by side at the clinic, helping others carry their pain so they could learn to walk again. In helping others heal, I learned how to heal myself. I watched Lila grow into her own strength, a strength born not of perfection, but of courage. The courage to face her demons, to own her flaws, to say no to people who treated her like a project and yes to herself. And me? I stopped trying to fix others before I fixed myself. June's memory lingered like a shadow, sometimes looming, sometimes distant. I stopped fearing her ghost. Instead, I started thanking her for the lessons I never expected to learn, for the fire she lit beneath my complacency, for showing me that love can be a double-edged sword, beautiful, yes, but also capable of cutting deep. I realized the people who hurt us are not always villains. Sometimes they're just broken humans trying to survive their own storms. It's a bitter truth, but an essential one. One evening, walking home under a sky bruised purple with twilight, I thought about the wreck, the crash that had seemed like an ending, but turned out to be a beginning. The car's crumpled hood was a metaphor for my own brokenness, but the engine still ran, and so did I. I won't say I'm whole, maybe I never will be, but I am more myself than ever before, more honest, more awake, more free, more alive. That in the end is what matters. If I have one message to leave behind, it's this. Life will break you. People will disappoint you. You will lose yourself in the wreckage, but you will find yourself again. In the cracks of your brokenness, new light can shine through. You just have to let it. Sometimes healing looks like forgiveness. Sometimes healing looks like saying goodbye. Sometimes healing looks like accepting that some people only love you in pieces and learning to love yourself in full anyway. I never expected to become June's masseur or to be part of her mother's life after everything. But life is stranger than fiction and more merciful. In the end, what saved me wasn't revenge or bitterness or pretending the past didn't happen. It was acceptance. Acceptance of pain, acceptance of loss, acceptance of the messy, beautiful imperfection of being human. So here I am, standing on the other side of the wreck, bruised, scarred, but breathing, alive, and ready for whatever comes next. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.